On the western bank of the Tigris River, in northern Mesopotamia, thousands of years before the name Ashur would make the ancient world tremble, a small settlement already existed.
Archaeological evidence traces the origins of this site back to at least the mid-3rd millennium before Christ, a period when the city, under the cultural influence of Sumer, built its first temples and structures. Notably, the city of Nineveh, which would later become the legendary capital of the Assyrian Empire, was even older than Ashur itself. Later Assyrian chronicles mention a list of very ancient rulers, including a man named Tudia, said to have lived in tents. However, these names are largely considered legendary rather than historically documented. One of the most remarkable features of Ashur was its bond with a god of the same name. The god Ashur bore precisely the same name as the city. It was as though the city itself were the earthly embodiment of this divine power. At first, the city was not independent. Ashur had once been subject to the Akkadian Empire under rulers such as Manishtushu, and later fell under the rule of the 3rd dynasty of Ur. But around 2025 before Christ, with the collapse of the Ur Empire, Ashur tasted independence for the first time. A man named Ashur I took the reins of power, inaugurating the period modern historians call the Old Assyrian period. Yet what took shape in this era bore no resemblance to the famous military empire that would come later. In those centuries, Ashur was known not for its armies, but for its merchant caravans. Assyrian traders traveled the long routes from Mesopotamia to the Anatolian plateau, where they established trading colonies known as Karam, the most famous of which was at the city of Kanesh, near modern Kultepe in Turkey. Thousands of clay tablets uncovered at this site offer a remarkable picture of family trading firms that carried tin and textiles from Ashur to Anatolia and returned with silver and gold. Society at the time had its own distinctive character as well. Men and women held relatively equal legal rights in inheritance, property, trade, and even divorce, a rare arrangement in the ancient world. Governance, too, was not held by an absolute king, but was shared between the Ishiakum and an assembly of the city's elders, known as the Alum. Ashur in those days resembled a merchant republic more than a kingdom. This state of affairs, however, did not last forever. Around 1808 before Christ, a man named Shamshi-Adad I, an Amorite ruler from the city of Ekallatum, seized Ashur and brought an end to the dynasty of Ashur I. Unlike previous rulers, he harbored sweeping military ambitions. Through the conquest of cities such as Mari, he built a vast realm across northern Mesopotamia that modern historians call the Kingdom of Upper Mesopotamia. Notably, he made his capital not at Ashur, but at the city of Shubat-Enlil, appointing his sons to govern various parts of the realm, including Ashur itself. Even so, he continued to honor Ashur's temples and rebuilt them. This was the first time the word kingdom, in its true sense, had been linked with the name of Ashur. But this kingdom, too, proved short-lived. Following Shamshi-Adad's death around 1776 before Christ, his realm swiftly collapsed.
Ashur once again became a small and vulnerable city. Centuries later, it fell under the rule of Babylon during the reign of Hammurabi and his successors. And eventually, in the 15th century before Christ, came under the domination of the powerful Hurrian kingdom of Mitanni, based in northern Syria. For nearly 2 centuries, Ashur was no longer master of its own fate. Yet this silence, too, would not last forever.
Around 1363 before Christ, a ruler named Ashur-uballit I ascended the throne of Ashur, a man who would forever transform the city's destiny. He threw off the Mitannian yoke and became the first Assyrian ruler to style himself not Ishiakum, but king of the land of Assyria, a title signaling that Ashur was no longer merely a city, but a unified territory under a single crown. The significance of this shift is clearly visible in the Amarna letters, the diplomatic archive of the Egyptian pharaoh's court. In these letters, Ashur-uballit called himself a great king and corresponded directly with the pharaoh as an equal to the kings of Babylon and Hatti. For the first time, Assyria was recognized among the greatest powers of its age. This moment can be considered the true beginning of Assyrian rule in its modern sense, the point at which a small city beside the Tigris transformed from a local trading confederation into the founding core of one of the greatest empires of the ancient world.
From then on, Ashur-uballit's successors, including Adad-nirari I and Shalmaneser I, expanded the borders of this fledgling kingdom. A century later, Tukulti-Ninurta I even conquered Babylon, an achievement unimaginable until that time.
Centuries afterward, this same dynasty gave rise to rulers such as Tiglath-Pileser III, Sargon II, Sennacherib, Esarhaddon, and Ashurbanipal, kings who turned Assyria into an unrivaled power, stretching from Egypt to the Zagros Mountains, and from the Persian Gulf to Anatolia. The very empire that in 612 and 609 before Christ ultimately collapsed before the alliance of Babylon and Media. Yet 1,000 years before that fall, in the days of Ashur-uballit I, no one could have imagined that a small city with a temple on the banks of the Tigris would one day carve its name forever into the depths of ancient history.